All right. Checking everything out. All right. Welcome. We're back. Actually, one moment. We're back. Full circle. You can tell I don't have my green screen because I've just moved. My place is still sort of a work in progress. We have a lot of balls in the air, as it were. But it's been about 3 weeks, and I didn't really want to go another full week without an episode. So I'm sort of working on a little bit of a suboptimal stream. Forgot to mention, my name is Chad, your host for the Full Circle. So yeah, I'm hoping to, as I get my life in order here at the new residence, that I can sort of start. I know I've talked a little bit about some new content, and I've talked about, I've obviously had my a little bit nicer of a backdrop here for the show, things like that. Hopefully that stuff can start coming together. But for now, hopefully I'm also not too echoey, things like that. Like I said, still this sort of area which will end up being where computing and gaming and whatnot happens is still a little bit of work in progress. So bear with me. That said, I am hoping to, like I said, look into doing a little bit more content down the road. I would like to I'd like to get more tactic discussions, like the one I tried with the Fulcrum. I may need to invest in a second Logitech webcam to do a little better job there. I would like to get some guests on here. I'm still hoping to. I have some. There's some things in the works. I'm hoping to have a guest on the show actually next week, but I'm still waiting for some confirmation on a few things with that. So we'll see how that goes. If not, I'll. If there's anybody that who thinks they would like to be a guest, or thinks would be a valuable guest for me to have to reach out to, I can try to do some of that, and we'll see. But for now, I want to get sort of a standardish episode out there to talk about what's going on. So over the course, it's been, I think I missed 3 weeks or 3 shows with what I had going on with moving. And not a whole lot really happened in most of those weeks related to Circle. Gen Con has come and gone. But the one thing we did get was this week on, I think it was Tuesday, the Secret Masters theme force was announced. Mr. Pagani posted the insider for that. And it's actually a pretty fascinating theme force, in my opinion, in that it it has an interesting benefit that I wouldn't have seen. So let's just talk about it real quick, and then we'll sort of much of this episode is going to be kind of digging into that. I believe we are getting this Circle, the 12 days of Christmas, or 12 factions of Christmas, or whatever you want to call it, CID, I believe is dropping tomorrow, so we've missed that by a day. Usually they drop stuff on Wednesday, actually, but I think Gen Con, they give themselves another day of a buffer. So a bunch of stuff I'm expecting for Circle coming out of that, just based on what they've said, and based on, we know at least the World Wipe, some Bones of Ouroboros stuff sounds likely. So all that in mind, I would say we'll certainly have plenty to talk about next week. But for this week, Secret Masters was announced by Mr. Brigatti, and it's an interesting theme for us. I don't know. It's not. it's not necessarily the theme force a lot of people were expecting, but it is. Parts of it certainly are. So let's go over the benefits. So Secret Masters is basically the Blackclad focused theme force. So you can take all as far as we understand it, you can take all non-character war beasts. You can take all Blackclad models, models and units. You can take Shifting Stones and Gallows Groves, which has been pretty standard for all of our themes. I think those are the two things that one of the things Privateer said with Mark III was when they started looking at themes that they weren't going to create ones where the central pieces to the faction weren't included. So for other factions, for example, you're not going to see protectorate lists that don't have access to choir. You're not going to see, unless it's a very specific reason, you're not going to see scorn lists that don't have access to Paingiver Beast Handlers. Unless, again, a very specific reason. I think it would be very unlikely to see a Trollbloods theme force that lacked the Creelstone, etc. So they are aware of these pieces that they think are central. So it seems to me that Privateer feels that for Circle, that's the Gallows Grove and the Shifting Stones. No big deal. So, as a result, they're part of this theme. They're part of all of our. If you look, every theme we have has access to those. So I think that they consider those central for us, which is cool. Shifting Stones are always something that you might contemplate putting in a list, but I don't think you necessarily always have to. And Gallows Groves, they're okay. I don't think they're an every list thing, but always good to have access to it. So anyways, so Blackclad model / units. One thing with that is this theme force is restricted to Blackclad Warlocks. So there will be no Chromac 1 or 2. There'll be no Wormwood, even though Cassius is a Blackclad, but Wormwood is not. And no Grail, who is a Wolfsworn Warlock. So a little bit of limitation there. Blackclad model / units, Shifting Stones, Gallows Groves, all non-character war beasts, so that's living and construct. And then it also has access to one minion. I think it said minion / mercenary, but all the things that play for Circle would be categorized as minions. One minion unit and one minion solo. Which is something they've been talking about that they're going to be adding to theme forces, but here it is for sure being added to this one. And it's very relevant as we talk about the benefits. So first benefit is for every 20 points of Blackclad models or units, you can get a free Blackclad, I believe it does specify medium or small base, Blackclad solo or command attachment. So currently those things would be Una the Falconer, Una 1, Blackclad Wayfarers, Blackclad Sound Shapers, Druid Overseers, Druid Wilder, and the Stonekeeper for the Shifting Stones. Those things are included. So that's where you can get your benefits from. For the time being, you get Warlocks can start the game with their friendly upkeeps in play, so we'll kind of touch on what that means in a minute. And then the final benefit is that Blackclad warrior models gain sack pawn to minion models. So those minions that you might include in this list now suddenly are bullet sponges for your druids, for your warlock, for well, that's pretty much it. Druids, any of the Blackclad models I just listed off. I believe Will did state warrior. Again, this is going to come out in September with the big theme drops, so there could be some things that change, but what this does mean is now so this is this is the interesting thing of this theme force, in my opinion. The free points are they're okay, and expected to a degree, right? We get free models for everywhere for every 5 points increment from 15 to 30, basically, and that gives them some ability to toggle, right? Because if it's a better benefit, you may need more points to get it, and so forth. And So the interesting thing here is that if you bring some minions, you're going to get some sack pawns. And there's a lot of interesting ways to go about that. So someone like, some of these have been pointed out, but Shamblers were in Will's document. They're super cheap. He was playing them with Morvana 1, so you're going to have regrowth on a unit. They're going to, those models may get killed. That'll produce corpses for the Boker. The Boker's Shamblers stand behind the Druids, and suddenly now you've got Druids that have stealth because they're in their clouds. They have Sacred Ward, so you can't hit them with spells. They're immune to every element in the game because of the ability on the Overseer, and you can't kill them. So it's a pretty powerful cloud wall when you need it to be. And then if some other Druid models were to die on the approach, now you've got corpses that the Shambler, the Poker picks up. So now you're replenishing your sack pawns potentially. Pretty cool list, pretty cool idea. Even without that engine in play, I would say you're not going to get 9 sack pawns cheaper. I don't think. I'd have to really look around, but I think it's 11 points for the Boker and Shamblers. So, and you still probably could get some back. So you're not really going to get anything cheaper than that for sack pawns. But there's other directions you could go with that, right? Bone Grinders are still relatively cheap, and the leader still has Craft Talisman, which for a lot of our Warlocks is actually pretty compelling, especially in a list like this where now that particular Warlock can be farther up the table safely. From what we can tell, that solo designation does not prevent you from bringing the lesser Warlocks. So that's going to put you into a position where you can bring one really compelling option that you can bring is of course Wrong Eye and Snapjaw, where it's having Starcross can be pretty helpful. But another really compelling one is actually Brune and Lug, and the reason that's compelling is that Brune has a spell called Stonehold, which says you roll 1 less die on damage rolls against him. At least I believe that's how it's worded. That's how it used to be worded. So as sack pawns go, that's pretty good, right? And he can transfer, this is true of all of these, but they can transfer the damage to their War Beast. So again, giving you sort of more bullet sponginess when you need it. So that's a very compelling advantage. So what a lot of people, and I want to address this because there's been a lot of angst, I guess I'll say, online about it, that Circle players were really hoping that this theme force was basically the living War Beast equivalent of Full Metal, what Full Metal is in Signar, or what I think it's Creator's Might is in Protectorate, and there's a couple others of these, where if you take War Beasts and maybe something else for each point of, for each of those points, 20, 25, something like that, you would get a free thing. Actually, Bones of Ouroboros is very much in that same vein. And that's not what this theme is. And the theme does require you to play quite a few points of Blackclad models in order to start getting points benefits. And a lot of people are saying, well, this is just not something our faction needs. And my answer to that is, while yes, I would like to see a theme that is focused around our living beasts, and I'd like to see some of these other themes perhaps fleshed out to sort of bring more depth to our ability to use our infantry to do things as well, I don't think that it means that this theme is bad. It's not bad. It is limited. And that's something that they talked about was going to be the case with all of these releases. They're going to be limited. They're purposefully going to be limited because most of these didn't have plans to be released for the first even cycle of themes, probably. I suspect a lot of those probably got touched on with the one theme that was released in January for many factions. So So yeah, I mean, right now the number of druid models available is pretty low, right? I mean, I just listed pretty much all of them off. You Mist Riders, druids, fulcrums, and the solos I listed. That's kind of it, right? Like to get the real benefits of this list, you're going to have to sort of spam one of those options to even get to the 40-point benefit, right? You're probably going to have to. You can do like a fulcrum and a unit of druids and some stuff like that and get there, but you're probably going to be having to do that, and that's fine. I think there's too much focus on this theme wasn't what I wanted, and there's been some frustration for some folks, and that's fine. I think the important thing though is to look at the theme for what it does do, right? What we're looking for in themes is compelling reasons to play them. And for this one, the compelling reason to play, in my opinion, is there's been a lot of discussion about, well, how am I supposed to play into ranged armies, especially without playing, say, Baldur 2? And Privateer has now given us this option where we can bring a whole unit of sack pawns, right? Let's say we took no druids at all. Just say I filled the list up with nothing but war beasts, non-character war beasts, right? I just put two ferals and two stalkers. Or, who cares? Just imagine that list for a minute. And now I can just bring I can just bring Bone Grinders. 8 points. I can spend 8 points, and they have tough, I think, now too. So, like for 8 points, I have 6 to 8 shield guards. I can't sack. I don't think you can sack Quan to knockdown models, but I'll have to look actually. Let's pull that up because I think it's pretty important. We'll look at Morvana 1 because she already has sack pawn. No, so that's just a shield guard rule. So sack pawns can even be knocked down. So, I mean that's pretty amazing because you already have if you just bring. Sorry, I'm gonna get something else open. If you just bring war beasts, shifting stones, and a unit of minions to a list. If that's all you put in your list, and I don't think that that's probably the most optimal build of this list, but let's just say that's all you did, you would still benefit from having all of your upkeeps in play, and you would still have however many sack pawns you brought. So I've mentioned these a few times. Bone Grinders. Let's say Bone Grinders are the bullet sponge that you're looking at. They bring Craft Talisman. As I said, I believe they have Tough. So that means out of 6 of them, I'm going to go, we can sort of, if we play by the odds, assume I'm going to get 8 shield guards just out of that. Or, sack pawns out of that. That means, depending on your positioning and what they're able, I mean, nothing's assured, right? But, like, just for your caster, that's 8 shots you can take. That's a lot of space forward you can play. And there's a lot of casters we have that are Blackclads that would like to see something like that. Especially since some of those things will also minimize the amount of shot. Like you can sack pawn a lot of stuff. Sprays can be sack pawn, which is something Stealth doesn't normally ignore. There are things like Iris 1, which is massive to shield guard, and I think we're going to start seeing more of her with this type of benefit being added to more themes. Being just I'm trying to think if there's another one. Something like a Gorman, it wouldn't really matter. I guess Blind Bomb might be something you would sack on. Anyways, there's a lot of abilities you could sack on, and there's a lot of squishy casters that we have that really just want that extra little bit of safety, right? Like Mosar. Mosar is a 14/14 with I think 15 life. He wants, like, I feel like this is a benefit he's completely happy to have. I think even someone like one of the Baldurs, I think it's sort of interesting there. I don't know that you play Baldur 2. I think you're probably still stronger off playing Baldur 2 and Bones of Ouroboros. But there's some interesting things at play there. Mosar, both Morvanas come quickly to mind. Fog of War is really good for the druids already. Cloud Walls with Will's List with Morvana 1 I think is very compelling, even though a lot of people have been kind of mopey about it. And also, this is getting ahead of it, but the Blackclad Stone Shaper's ability to put it's Earth's Might, I think they called it. It would be plus your strength for Wolds, is going to make for some other versions of this that are kind of compelling. Being able to get Power 19 Wold Guardians is pretty decent. For example, same Akana Megalith, Wold Wardens. But you can go the other direction too, right? You get your Living Beast and you have your Blackclad Wayfarer, you have your Druid Wilder to do things. One with the Parrot Griffins might be really interesting as well. So yeah, even if you don't put Druid models, let's just say you're like, screw this, I don't want any Druid models in my list. You're still getting benefits from playing this. You're still getting sack pawns. You're still getting your upkeeps out. And most of the Warlocks that are Blackclads have some upkeeps that they care about, that they can put out. I think the ones that are the most compelling are actually Mosar. Mosar has 2. It did say friendly, I believe, or I believe it was clarified by Will, because putting Curse of Shadows out right away would be amazing. But Mosar starting with Mirage and Sunhammer in play is extremely helpful. That's another pillar he can cast. Actually, since they're upkeeps, that's now 2 pillars he could cast early on in the game that he couldn't before. Or more transfers, potentially. I also think Mosar really likes the Craft Talisman ability from the Bone Grinders, which I've sort of been harping on. A few of the casters really like that. I think it's really interesting on Tanith, Morvana, Mosar, maybe Kruger 1. Probably not. I mean, it's okay. It's just, I don't know that I go that far out of my way for it. Probably less so in Una. She's not really... Twister's really her only... Well, it is plus 2 range, so it lets her cycle her spells a little better, too. I don't know that either Kaya really would look for that. But, again, putting her... both of them... all 3 Kayas have upkeeps that certainly do matter to them. Oh, sorry, I'm a little out of focus. There you go. Yeah, really most of the Blackclad Warlocks have something. Kruger 2 doesn't. Baldur 2 doesn't. His Rockwall is his only upkeep, and you can't start with that in play. Grail can't be played. Bradigus. I think Bradigus you're going to play in Bones, not this theme. But not to say you couldn't, but I think you play him in the Bones theme. And but if you didn't, it lets him start with Synergy and Mystic Words. I forget that spell got changed. So anyways, there's a lot of compelling benefits there. Then let's throw the Druids on top of it. You bring a unit of Mist Riders, that's 20 points easily. You might do a unit of Druids of Orboros and a Blackclad, that's 20 points. That'll give you a second Blackclad or some other benefit. You could do 2 of really any of these. You could do a Fulcrum, and literally any of our solos is enough because Fulcrum's 19. So 1 more point gives you a second solo. So the 3 points being the cheapest. 2 technically Stonekeeper. And so on. So that will give you 1 free model, and sometimes 1. A unit of Druids with 2 Blackclads is really not a bad package. It sort of is giving you a lot, and then like the Sackpawns or whatever, and like that's giving you your 1 unit you sort of want to have for going into units, to get away, to use the benefits that Druids do have. And I know a lot of folks are not huge fans of Druids, but they're just a different unit now, and you have to keep that in mind. But like that's a decent core for a living unit. And then Mist Riders are another good option, right? Like you can get a lot of anti-infantry out of just 1 unit of Druid Mist Riders. Again, something I don't think you should just ignore. So So that said, like I think there's a lot of reasons to look into this. I don't have any specific lists just yet. I think, like I said, that some of them are going to want they're all going to want kind of different things. I think I do really, really want to see what this theme looks like when some more releases come out. Keep in mind, Blind Water is getting a bunch of releases, so it's entirely possible that there's something compelling in there that we want to bring. I think there's lots of things. If this is, if when this becomes a theme that goes through CID, I think there's a lot we could see there. I think that there's a lot of interesting builds for this now. Now, what this theme is not, and this is the criticism, this is not a Living Beast specifically focused list. I think this is a list where you can bring whatever beasts you want as long as they're not characters. You're going to get some free points if you bring a little bit of druids along with you. You're going to get some... and I sort of was focusing on the fact that these are sack pawns for your caster, but they're also sack pawns for your unit, right? If you're ever like, well, Mist Riders are pretty good, but I can't keep them alive. Or druids are pretty good, but they're a little expensive, especially when I have to keep them alive. Like, you now have ways around that. If you have something like, I need this Blackclad to stay alive to make sure that whatever... Again, there's a lot of things, and this I think people, what this does is gives you a lot of ways to have some high skill applications in your list. Being able to place sack, having played against Khador a bunch, their Winterguard theme, where their caster can sack pawn to Winterguard models, which are just dirt cheap, and you sometimes look and you're like, well, I could probably assassinate you if I could hit, if Loki could hit a hook, but I'd have to kill 8 models to do it. Probably not going to happen. I could probably kill you if I could hit you with these 3 sprays. Not happening. I can kill you if I hit you with these Wold Weird shots. Not happening. If I'm, someone like Sloane, she's like, oh, well, I can just assassinate you. But now I'm like, at least 3 of my shots aren't going to hit. You combine that with a few transfers, and like some of our warlocks are incredibly tanky. So, anyways, I'm sort of belaboring the point, but I think this theme has a lot of very interesting applications. I think it's very interesting. I'm very glad we got it added to the faction. I still do hope that we have a theme coming that's like beast focused theme, because I think it's still a very central theme to what we do. And while beasts are included, kind of obviously, living beasts are included kind of obviously in everything, I would really, really like to see, something that focused more on them and supporting them. And maybe that's coming later and we're just sort of lacking the releases for it. Maybe it's not. I don't know. It's one of the reasons why Bones of Ouroboros is really compelling to me in my head right now too, with some of the proposed changes. So we'll tackle those down the road. But anyways, so that's kind of all specifically in the Secret Masters. I do want to do what we kind of do the show about, the roots of the show, if you will. And I want to talk about another unit. And this one is one we haven't talked about yet, so it's going to be good to, and it is relevant to this discussion, and that is the Druid Mist Riders. So I haven't talked about them yet. I sort of lament that, but I've also sort of not really had the opportunity to give them, or I've chosen to be focused on some other things in Circle right now, so I haven't really given Mist Riders their time, as it were, on the table. But I have looked at them, I've played them a little bit, I've thought a lot about them, so let's go ahead and talk about them. So first off, they are a Circle Blackclad unit, so as I said, they're going to fit right into... They now have a theme. Druids of Ouroboros and Druid Mist Riders just did not have a theme that they existed at all. Now they do. So they're a Circle Blackclad unit. They are Speed 8, Strength 6, Mat 5, Rat 4, Defense 14, Armor 15, and Command 9. They are cavalry models. They're on a large base, of course, and they have Pathfinder. It is 12 points for 3 models and 20 points for 5 models. They're field allowance 2. They all have 5 wounds. The mount is half-inch melee, power 12, relatively standard, and they're Volge, it's basically the same weapon the other druids have, is a 2-inch melee, power and strength 10 with magic damage. Excuse me, damage type magical. To the back. And then on the back of their card, there's a few things. They have reposition 3, so as cavalry models, that's very common. They have brutal charge on their Volge, which gives them +2 to damage, so they go up to power 12 on the charge. And then they have Battle Wizard, which I've talked about before. But once per turn, if they destroy one or more enemy models with melee attack, immediately after that's resolved, they can use a magic ability. They have 2 magic abilities. One is Chain Lightning. It's a range 10 magic attack. I don't think we have talked about Chain Lightning, actually. It's range 10 magic attack. Model hit by Chain Lightning suffers a POW 10 electrical damage roll, and lightning arcs from that model to D3 additional models. Lightning arcs the model to the nearest it hasn't hit. Each model suffers a POW 10. The arc damage rolls are not considered when caused by an attack, and they're simultaneous. Or Summon Vortex, which is, we talked about a little bit with the druids. It's the exact same. Center 3-inch AoE on the model. Remains centered on the model for 1 round. If the model is destroyed, remove that AoE as well. And while in the AoE, enemy models will suffer -2 to their attack rolls. There's just a tactical tip here about reposition. So Mist Riders. So, they would be sort of in Mark II. In Mark II, they weren't this, but like when we think about regular cavalry or heavy cavalry, this is sort of the closest Circle gets to that, and that's fine. Reposition 3 is sort of what highlights that, but I wouldn't really say that's the rule. So one of the key things here to me is that this is a speed 8 unit with a range 10 attack, and reposition 3. That puts them sort of in the situation where they're threatening as far out as many of the like longer range things in other factions, but they're doing it with spells, so there's what ignores that sort of changes. And it's D3 leaps, which means that there's a potential to hit a lot more units, especially when you add in Battle Wizard. So they're a little bit pricey at 20 points, which is fine. I think you select them with a very specific purpose. 2 min units is not bad. It really depends on what spells your caster brings. So like I've theorized them with, say, Chromac 2, and in that case I sort of felt like 2 minimum units would be better, because then I can kind of have them out on the flanks, harassing out there, throwing their spells around and stuff like that. One thing to remember, so you probably heard me say Mat 5, but keep in mind that cavalry charges are, I think it's just labeled as boosted, maybe additional type, but I think it's boosted to hit. So Mat 5 is actually not too bad when you're rolling 3 dice to hit on the charge. Magic ability 6 is a little bit low. Keep in mind we can buff that up using the Celestial Fulcrum, which is a pretty strong option. The damage of Chain Lightning can be buffed by the Storm Raptor's Animus. Obviously, we're getting a lot of points into a list, but it is something that can be done. And to me, when I look at this unit, I think they're not, obviously, POW 12s on the charge are not really the sort of thing that you write home about, damage-wise. They can do, it's high enough to do some pretty solid damage into light jacks, into even like possibly things like heavy infantry. Yeah, the fact that they get the additional die or boosted die on the charge is going to give them a little more accuracy, so there's some things that's going to be good into. But for the most part, they're not really there you're not going to like send them charging into a jack and have it killed. I mean, I'm not saying they can't do some damage, but it's not their role. Their role is going to be to block line of sight. It's going to be to move quickly on a flank. It's going to be to use a combination of their Battle Wizard charges to dig very deep with that Chain Lightning, and so like into something like Protectorate, for example, where you're like, well, am I really going to get a lot of work out of them? Well, You only need a 6 without any, just baseline. You only need a 6 to hit a choir member, and then you're going to get D3 leaps. And if you can take out, you might be able to take out like 2 choir with 1 chain lightning. Now all of a sudden their jacks are becoming less and less effective. You can take out all sorts of support solos in the back with just hitting a couple chain lightnings. You're going to be able to do it again. A lot of times you're going to see stuff like immediately right behind their jack, and then you bounce it off the jack and into it. Pardon me. So to me, that's where their advantage is. I think that there's certainly some spells that they really benefit from. Hand of Fate on Una 2 strikes me. Carnage from Chromac has some obvious implications to hitting in melee, especially if they don't charge. I just blanked on the other ones. Affliction is interesting with Tanith, but keep in mind the leaps won't get the auto point because they're not an attack. I don't believe Affliction specifies attack. What else has in it? Damage or accuracy buff. Things like Curse of Shadows are, I guess, pretty obvious. You get another 2 damage out there, either from the chain lightnings or whatever. Also, Curse of Shadows is always interesting on cab models since they can, sometimes you can get through the screen into the juicy backline with it. So, their unit, not a lot of people have really been playing, but I do think they have a lot of places they can shine. They're extremely defensive with someone like Kruger 1. So you do Kruger 1, you throw Gale Winds out there. They put the clouds on themselves. They advance 8. This is an interesting thing. So since they have reposition, you can advance 8 with them, put down their Vortex, and reposition 3, and you got an 11-inch move and Cloud Wall. Pretty important. Or could be pretty important. And then you do something like that with a Kruger 1, and their defense is 19 anywhere. Can be pretty useful. If you do that with Kruger 1, you have to make sure you activate Kruger 1 first to cast Gale Winds, because he will make their clouds go away if you do it the other order. I think... so yeah, I don't have a ton to say. Like I said, I haven't really played them. These are just sort of some quick takes on where I think they're good. I've liked looking at them a lot with Una 2, especially in a Storm Raptor build. I've liked looking at them with Chromac 2, especially in a Storm Raptor build. Obviously, I think some Signar that's being played right now is something they'll be somewhat weak to. I think a lot of other factions aren't going to like the number of leaps that are out there. I think... like 2 units of these guys is actually going to wreck like Ghost Fleet pretty hard. No matter, I mean, even with the Wraith Engine, Potens are kind of getting to be close enough. Stuff like that. So that's the Mist Riders. I'm not gonna. I don't want to go too much more in depth with them. If I start playing them and have a lot of success, and we sort of talked about them with the theme, I think that's another place with them. I do think they're a unit that they're really cool models, first of all. They're a unit that I think is good. They're a unit I think, consider when to play 1 full unit versus 2 min units. Consider, or even 1 min unit in some cases. Definitely consider what your matchup is going to be. If you're playing Secret Masters, definitely take a look at them there. I think it's a really strong place for them to be. So, that is... Mist Riders. And then to move on to one more thing, I have gotten a couple questions before I post this episode. I'll kind of do them in order. I may skip one of them. We'll see. One of the first questions, other than to talk about Secret Masters, that I got was, how can circles start placing top 8 in events? And my answer to that is, they already do. That's not really the answer you're looking for, but the first thing I do want to say is Circle has been placing. Danielle placed in the top 8 at Gen Con. He broke into Masters. He did lose in round 1. Dan's been doing a pretty fantastic job being in the top 8. Until the last month or so, I would say I was seeing Circle still placing in Europe, especially I don't have his name, but there's a Polish player who has been having a decent amount of success. I think he's mostly been playing Baldur 2 and Una 1, or I'm sorry, Baldur 2 and Una 2. So it's there. The next question is, I mean, sort of what your question is getting at is sort of how can Circle be more competitive? And the answer there is, as always, the player matters more than the faction. I think knowing your faction, knowing its strengths, and knowing what to do with it is always going to be important. And I think obviously some factions will have more or less good or bad matchups into a field, a steamroller, and stuff at any given time. I do think most people feel that Circle is sort of struggling a bit right now. And I think they're going to be a bit more on the rise with some of the changes to Steamroller 2017. We'll, of course, see. I anticipate more infantry and more solos are going to be hitting the table. That's generally only beneficial to Circle. But I don't think those Warjack lists are going to go away. They're usually a bit tougher, especially for people who haven't played against them a lot. But I think it's there. I think it's just the ways that more Circle players get to the top is by the same thing every other faction does, which is you need to play more games, you need to play into more of the field, you need to really think about how to use your list to win matchups. Because I think oftentimes we're very quick to go, well, this list is bad and he didn't play a good list, so he couldn't make top 8. Well, that's not how that works. How it works is knowing what your list can and can't do, trying to avoid a bad matchup, and then using the pieces you brought to give you enough advantage to win. And that's not always the easiest, but what that usually means is you need to sort of pick a list, I haven't really been great about doing this myself, but realistically you should pick a list, play 5 games with it without changing. And if it's a net list, even better. If it's not, if it just really doesn't click early, then yeah, go ahead and switch. But play 5 games with it. If you've got a pretty good idea and pretty solid thing, and it seems like you're having close games, whether you're winning or losing, stick with it. Play 5 games. And the reason you do that, a bare minimum 5 games with the list, and see how it shakes out. And if you're having success after 5 games, now maybe you tweak something or look at something. But then what you really need to start doing is looking at what that list does into its matchups that you currently think are bad. Because, it might be bad, but maybe you play that matchup 3 times and now you start winning it, right? Or just a really powerful caster. Once you know, like, okay, well, I'm going to play against Haley 2 in Full Metal. But and if I do these 3, these things, it'll help make that game more favorable to me, even though a lot of people look at that match and go, it's unfavorable. So, but ultimately, to see more Circle in the top 8, it's just a matter of there needs to be a decent number of people playing Circle. It needs to be a decent number of people who are playing it a lot, and the players matter more than the players matter the most. So. I'm going to briefly touch on this, but the second question I got was how will we handle Siege 2, and I don't have a great answer. This is one of my locals. He's sort of trolling me, but I don't have a great answer. I'm not terribly worried about Siege 2. He brings a lot of really interesting tools. He sort of does a lot of the things Signar does. He does them in different ways a little bit. He has a little bit more of an infantry focus. He can crack a little more armor. I don't really think Siege 2 is going to be something that gets dropped into Circle a ton. I don't think he's something that's like a silver bullet to Circle by any means. So he can hit hard. He does a lot of really great things with trenchers. He's got guns. He does, if you can play into most Signar, I think that you're going to be able to play into Siege 2. But maybe we'll see. And then the final question I got was running Chromac 1 with Tharn Ravagers, any must takes? I have not really thought of running Chromac 1 with Ravagers, primarily because I don't think he does anything for them that I really want him to do. And I believe, I'm going to check, but I also believe that, hold on. Yeah, I believe that remove from play actually turns off Warpath, or doesn't trigger So you're not really going to get benefit from snacking. I think you can choose not to remove from play and not to heal. But it's going to be weird. So with Warpath, you want to make sure you're destroying the model. So if you need your Warpath move, you can't snack. Number one. So I'm assuming Devourer's Host if you're playing Ravagers with him. So that's number 2. If you're going to play Ravagers with Chromac 1, do it in Devourer's Host, because I don't think it makes sense to do it any other way. If you're not going to do that, you probably just do a vanilla list or look at some other possibilities. And the question specifically says Ravagers. So if I were going to do that, I would probably still... You still want somebody who's going to take advantage of the corpses. Chromac 1 doesn't use them, unlike Chromac 2. And Chromac 1, the Bestial can, in some instances, protect his whole army, and a valuable resolve is going to get +2 armor to a single unit or model. I think in this case, I would be... Let me think about this. Melee units are sort of tough with Chromac 1 because frequently they're going to get in the way of his Warpath sprint shenanigans that he really wants to do. So that's why I kind of don't really love the idea, but a Blood Pack is actually something I would love with him if they could get a little bit better, but I digress on that. So if I'm going to use Ravagers though, I'm probably going to put the +2 armor on them. I'm kind of going to screen my beast with them and try to clear out things and chip damage into stuff. I don't know where your corpses are going to necessarily go, and I probably would still make sure to bring a Shaman because no knockdown for Chromac is going to be really good with the Hunter's Grace. So other than that, I would just say make sure when you're playing them that you're playing very carefully to not block your own charge lanes for your beasts or your sprint lanes for your beasts or whatever. And I would still definitely bring Getterix. And some source of primal. Death Wolves or Lord of the Feast would be optional. They use the corpses kind of the best, but you could probably do White Mane, possibly even the Shaman or just the Chieftain or some of the Ravager models in the unit. So, if I get more thoughts on that, I'll try to maybe elaborate on that a little bit more. But he's not a place in general that I think. Unfortunately, that I think Ravagers make a lot of sense because he's such a Warbeast-centric caster. I like them with Chromac. I don't necessarily like Ravagers, but I do like bringing Tharn with Chromac 2 in order to get, I think I want to get to exactly 30 points of Tharn, so I can give Chromac 3 corpses to start the game because I think that there's a lot of strong implications to doing that. So that was sort of it for the questions I had. If there's more, feel free to comment on the show. Yeah, Shaman White Mane seems good. Feel free to comment after the show or shoot me a message on pretty much any of the social media you can find me on, and I'd be happy to discuss it with you. Like I said, next week I'm hoping to have a guest on the show for the first time to talk about some stuff. If it works out, you'll see some advanced advertising from me. So look for that. As always, love to thank the sponsors. Muse has let me host my links to my videos there. I will try to be a little better about putting them up. I think last time I just dumped the whole playlist down. I'm going to try tomorrow to actually just upload or just post this one. But I'd like to thank them. I also use their tokens there, which I really like. Also, as always, my sponsor, Griffin's Roots Painting. Beautiful models that I get to play with. And if you like beautiful models, check out her work on at griffinsrootspainting.com or Griffin's Roots Painting on Facebook for some ideas of what she's done. So, like I said, next week, I'm sure with CID coming out, we will have more to talk about. Hopefully, I'll have a guest as well. And until then, thanks for watching.